Lenihan Boxing Social in association with Empire Fight Store and our Kings Competitions. Been joined by Gareth A. Davis. Gareth, how's things, my friend? Boxing's in such a good place right now. There's big event after big event. What a time to be a fan and just to be involved.
Yeah, it's a very, very good time. But we've known that this was coming. Only the doubters were throwing out kind of sparks and bad vibes about what was going on in boxing. It's a great time to be involved, as you know. And it's been like that way for a long time now, certainly since Saudi Arabian investment, through this period of waiting for the heavyweights to all fight each other. So, yeah, patience always pays off. It's a brilliant time to be involved, lifesaver.
Lifesaver. It never gets old, bud. Look, I watched the TalkSport interview this week. I think you were on and you were discussing with Adam Cattrall, Tyson Fury's whole situation. I just want to pick up on that a little bit. I watched the one before that actually with Simon Jordan and Frank Warren, and you don't think you were best pleased with sort of how it was coming across from Simon. Just to touch on that, what was it about what he was saying that wasn't agreeing with you?
Well, I mean, Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua is a huge fight. I
Mega.
just think there's a negativity at times from the nuance that Simon Jordan's portraying of Fury and Joshua is still a really big fight commercially in the UK, and
It's mega.
you know they're still yeah, it's a huge commercial machine in terms of if it happens. I do hope it happens because it's good for this era of heavyweight boxing. It probably decides who is the most successful 2 and 3 in the division after Alexander Usyk. Um, I do think it's a fight that would capture public imagination, much as I do Conor Benn and Chris Eubank,
Yeah.
which I think was what I was feeling critical about. Was there's always why just criticize all the time? But we've got massive things going on in the sport right now, huge fights. The fans are coming back to the sport, and it's a period where we can enjoy. There's enough money from the Saudi Arabians and enough investment to get fights over the line when the egos get in the way of it.
Mhm.
Obviously, there are that we need more transparency. We needed that around the Conor Benn case. We haven't had full transparency, which I'm sure will come at some point. There'll be the full disclosure at some point. But overall, I think my view is Tyson Fury. Yes, he feels like he's retired at the moment, and it's perception is reality, and he's done what he thought was right for himself, which is retire in the moment. But I am absolutely well. I'd be very surprised if he doesn't come back in the summer and fight Anthony Joshua. The poser he's created right now for Anthony Joshua is that does Joshua now go into a Dillian White fight, a Deontay Wilder fight, keep himself going and keep the momentum or get momentum back before he fights Tyson Fury, which will probably be a summer fight.
What would happen in the meantime if Anthony Joshua was to say Fury's retirement right now, he believes it. I think we've mentioned before with, I think Frank's touched on the bipolar, and look, he will make these decisions. Like, don't say the forever kind of thing, but say it's till back end of next year. Joshua then goes and says, I'm still entitled to that rematch with Daniel Dubois. You mentioned a Dillian White. If Anthony Joshua is to get beat between now and say a Tyson return, does that then does that make it a smaller fight? Because right now, I think even now, if it was to happen now, it's bigger than Eubank Ben, in my opinion.
No, I agree, and it's. I know we're going to talk about Terence Crawford and Saul Canelo Alvarez as well today, but it's a bigger fight than that. It's a much bigger fight. These are the two guys who, for the last 10 years, have made boxing rich. It's rich. It's a fascinating duel in lots of ways, and it defines them in the era. There's so much more for Anthony Joshua to gain than Tyson Fury out of a win from it. He probably needs it a little bit more, given that he didn't face Deontay Wilder, and Fury obviously had 3 fights with Deontay Wilder. One has been sacrificed for the other. But you just recall how close we were to getting Fury and Joshua a two-fight deal when the American Court of Arbitration found that Deontay Wilder deserved a third fight against Tyson Fury, that he owed him a trilogy fight. So it's just the way the have fallen over the years. It's a travesty for me that we never saw Anthony Joshua against Deontay Wilder. There was a period when I favoured Deontay Wilder, but now I think I'd favour Anthony Joshua to win that fight.
Yeah.
But you're right. If he lost in the meantime and had an interim fight, it probably would be a much smaller affair.
I see
Or a
Dillian.
smaller.
I see Dillian White come out and say he wants to fight Joshua. Obviously, we know what happened with him last time that fight got made, but he seemingly looks to be back in the mix. Is that the right step for AJ next, do you think? Whilst he maybe sees if this retirement is legit, because there's the Dubois Parker fight there as well. So Anthony Joshua's mind must be, for me, a bit all over in terms of what his next step is.
Well, yeah. If you add into the mix Fury's comment last week, is he coming back at all? Does him and believe that is it, with no fanfare and no press conference to say goodbye, no dinner or whatever it would be. Like you say, it's a scrambled scenario, not so much for him, but more for his promoter, Eddie Hearn, who's got to put the pieces together. Because right now, never mind Dick Turpin, Humpty Dumpty's fallen off the wall. Well, I mean, but there's eggshell there, because where is the clear route for Anthony Joshua as we're talking right now? There isn't one. So does he ignore what Tyson Fury's saying and wait out for a big fight with him? Does he plow on? I think their attitude will be, look, let's plow on. We haven't got any certainty at all over what Tyson Fury's going to do in the future. The longer he stays out, the more he might feel I think he will, because to him will be so extraordinary. It will be very, very difficult for him to fight to Joshua.
Well, we'll see how that pans out. Look, I want to talk about the Crawford Canelo thing. This is picking up speed. I think we spoke probably for the last 12 to 18 months about the possibility, but we seem to be edging closer piece by piece along with these other big cards. I think when I spoke to you in one of the interviews we've done, one of the many ones, you've said, look, I really want to see that fight. Excited that we're getting nearer, and can Terence Crawford pull this off?
It's a very, very hard fight for him. You look at the silhouettes moving, and you look at the two guys that have beaten Canelo. Obviously, Floyd Mayweather was a much older fighter than Canelo, but Canelo was very raw at that stage. And the Dimitri Bivol victory over Canelo, he hit him with a lot of 1-2s. He moved very well. He's a bigger guy. Crawford's got to be very active against him to beat him, in my view. It's a very tough fight for him. He looks more up to the task in terms of moving up to super middleweight. It's a huge step up. He's got everything to gain in terms of finances and legacy. It's Canelo who has everything to lose in the fight, because I think most of us would have him as a favourite, even though Crawford can look after himself. But he's got to be very active in this fight, in my view, Crawford.
I think if you'd have asked me about maybe any other fighter in the sport of boxing who could come from the lower weight classes to do something like this, the answer would only be a Terence Crawford. I think if this scenario was thrown about with other fighters right now who have done what he's done, and no disrespect, I would potentially say, no, absolutely not. But he is one that I look at and go, if there is someone who can, I think it would be him.
Yeah, I think he's there. I think this is number 3 pound for pound against number 5 pound for pound in the world. I've got Usyk at 1, Naoya Inoue at 2, Crawford at 3. I think I might have Beterbiev at 4 and Canelo at 5 at the moment. Yeah. It is a pound for pound fight. There's no question about it. He is capable because of his skills, because of his ability to mirror other fighters and counteract them. Yeah. But he's got to do something. He can't. Look how close the fight was with Israel Madrimov at light middle. And Madrimov is a very strong fighter. Canelo is that level above. He's not a massive volume puncher, But what Crawford's going to have to do is move adroitly, win the exchanges, and create more volume punching than
Yeah.
Canelo. Whereas Canelo will probably go hunting for him early on,
Mm.
and then settle in. But it's a great fight. It's one I'd love to see. It's whether it's May or September. I mean, I'm hearing it's September in Las Vegas rather than May, but
Yeah.
maybe why wait for both guys to be out for a year?
Well, I read, do you know what? I was reading the reports of September, but then I also read that PBC had a hold on the T-Mobile, I think, for that weekend. Now, however their involvement comes to play in this, I've read that Canelo was a free agent. I don't know if he has one left with them or not. I don't know what the state of play is, but I'd be interested to see that because if not, then I'm not sure who they put on.
Well, I don't know. It's of no
Yeah,
interest to me at the moment, frankly. I mean, it could be a Gervonta Davis fight, it could be whoever, couldn't it? But
yeah.
um, I think we're going to get Gervonta Davis in the mix with them quite soon as well. I mean, obviously, Al Heyman um, is not dealing openly with the promoter. Al Heyman's not dealing openly with Turkey Al Sheikh at the moment, but it wouldn't surprise me if they did business together because Gervonta really is the only major name who hasn't really gone into the mix yet.
Do you think that's a ploy to almost say, look, I'm the star over here. I'm not going to be dictated to. Is he almost sort of flexing his muscles as a draw now? I mean, everyone else has sort of gone across and look at what they're doing is great, but is he almost being a bit buoyant to say, I don't need to do that. I'm a big draw myself without getting involved in anything else. Is he trying to do that, do you think, by waiting out a little bit longer and then maybe getting
Maybe,
the offer?
maybe, maybe. I'm sure he will get an offer at some point. He's in the pound for pound best at the moment. I know he's only going to have one more fight this year and retire, in his view. Um, but I
I hope
think
not.
no, no, he won't. He won't. I mean, he's just saying that. If you recall the exchange last year between on social media between Gervonta Davis and Turkey Al Sheikh, it was that buy me two
All
Maseratis and
right.
I'll come over. And Turkey's response was, "I'll buy you two boxing gloves."
Yeah.
Um, but listen. I mean, Gervonta Davis against Shakur Stevenson, Gervonta Davis against Tio Lopez, Devin Haney, a rematch with Ryan Garcia, even. They're all massive fights. So, um, that at some point he's going to end up inside the diaspora of the Saudi Arabian investment in boxing, in my view.
Do you think for him to be known as a pound for pound, to be definitely in that mix that he now starts having to add the names to the resume because there definitely seems to be the pound for pound talent, level of skill. I think he's got an exceptional boxing brain actually, which doesn't get spoken about enough because
Mm.
of the highlight reel knockouts, which is what comes with the territory. But if he starts fighting a guy like a Shakur, a Devin, and a Tio, Ryan Garcia, if he starts putting a couple of them together, he's in the conversation for one of the best in the sport, isn't he?
No question. I think he already is in the conversation, the best in the sport. He's so talented. Obviously, keeping his life on track is a really big thing for Gervonta.
Hmm.
Um, given his background
Yeah.
and there are things that go on. He's a particular character, isn't he? He's fascinating. Of all of them in America, he's probably the most fascinating. Terence is grown up now, 38. Shaka Stevenson is one of 11 kids and is providing for many people. And he's in the fold now. But I'd love to see those two fights. I think it really is one of the biggest fights in America. I think Gervonta against Shaka Stevenson in American terms, if that happens in the next year or into 2026 or the end of this year, it will capture imagination in America, rather like Crawford and Canelo, in my view.
I think that is the fight in America to make right now, in my opinion. But look, I'm biased because I'm as much as I'm involved in the media, I'm a fan of both. I think they both got such talent, skill, and I got to speak to Shakur for the first time in a one-on-one interview the other week at the press conference, and he's good to be around. And I just think it's such a good time in the sport now, and we see him in these big fights,
Yeah.
and let's see what they can do.
He's a fascinating character. I've been interviewing for a long time. He came close to fighting Joe Cordina at one point at super featherweight, and I always find it fascinating to speak to him because he's really got his head screwed on. He's a real character. He's one of 11 kids. He's got an incredible backstory. He's got talent to die for in the ring. So much talent that people call him boring. That's what's so weird. Um, that he doesn't finish opponents enough. No, he's a fantastic kid. I'm glad you got to meet him. Yeah, he's great to be around.
I think it's double-edged sword though. Look what he did with a puncher in Oscar Valdez. Oscar Valdez can really whack, and he's a world level fighter, and he walked through him. So it's horses for courses, isn't it, in boxing? And he
Exactly.
can never please
Exactly.
everyone. I want to touch on just quickly Dalton Smith this weekend. On the flip side to Diego Pacheco and Nelson, two undefeated guys. All that's going to be following Dalton Smith with an opportunity for a vacant European title. Nothing seems to faze him. He never seems to go up or down in terms of temperament. I was with Dalton this week. He's very calm, composed, relaxed, happy to go the traditional route, wants to pick up every belt. Once he picks this up, he says, look, there's a space on my media wall, one for the European and then another one for the world. But domestically as well, we've got the likes of a Jack Cattrall and all these other big fights for him. What do you make of Dalton Smith? And it's a big moment for him this weekend again.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I do favour him against the Frenchman. I think it's his first outing outside La Belle France.
Mm-hmm.
He's a tough guy. He's going to have a tough fight, but Dalton's very tough and he's maturing all the time. Every time I bump into Dalton, you can just feel the presence of him, that he's growing. I think he needs to head up to world level after this, really. I'd like to see him at certainly short of world level. I think he's 27 now. He's got his man strength. He's got, I always describe him, I've said this before, bore you to death with it. He fights like a man with two axes in his hand. Very powerful fighter. Very strong at 10 stone. Time to shine and get in on that Saudi mix. And, let's get Eddie, if we can get this victory, maybe gets on the 5v5 in April or May as well, and we see him in a big fight.
Would now be the time if Adam Azim gets his job done against Lenihan, would then be the time for that fight to happen, maybe on a 5v5?
I don't think they're going to let it happen. I think they're going to build Adam Azim a bit more first. I don't think it's going to happen.
No? Not even if he picks
No.
that IBO? Do you see...
Instinctively, I just don't think it's going to happen. That is my view on it at the moment. I just don't.
Is Adam Azim a bit too raw? Is he still to try and get to that level?
That's what I'm saying. They're still building him, Matt. I think that it's not going to happen right now. It's not going to happen. I just don't see it.
In terms of the promoters, last one, and the 5v5s, there was a lot of talks about Matchroom and Golden Boy potentially doing something. We're hearing that they're going to run Matchroom and Queensberry back again. What are the type of fights and matchups you want to see? Because last time I think we were really in for a treat. When you think about the type of fighters they've got, though, it's never ending. It's never ending.
Yeah. It's easier to do Matchroom and Golden Boy at the moment than it is Matchroom and Queensberry.
Who would you like, Matchroom and Golden Boy? I think we're getting is Cattrall and Barboza. We're getting a little taste of that, aren't we, in Manchester?
Yeah. I need to look it up. I need to have a think about it. Boxing Scene reported that it's looking like it could happen.
I tell you what, how bruised would Mr. Hearn's ego be if he's a whitewash from Oscar De La Hoya? I know business is good and it's about making the fights, but he needs to get off the mark, doesn't he, in something.
Well, yeah, he would be bruised by it, but the joke is that you'd have Oscar in with Eddie Hearn at some point. There are some matchups proposed here. Virgil Ortiz, Jaron Ennis, Shaka Stevenson, William Zepeda. There's two great ones to begin with, for example. But you could go through and form a lot of them. But I think we'll get a 5v5 between Queensberry and Matchroom first. The big problem is who they match at cruiserweight and heavyweight. That's what they've got to try and find. But look, Deontay Wilder went on to Eddie Hearn's team last time, and they haven't even said a kind word to each other over 10 years. So they ended up on the same team. So transfer news, all of that kind of stuff, that can all happen. So
Yeah.
it's all good for the sport, though. And I think if you get a USA against a UK, I like the fact it's got that Ryder Cup feel to it. If the 5v5 definitely worked in Riyadh, and I think there'll be a lot more of them, or at least one or two a year.
I would like to see all the promoters in the States get together, and then so you get your PBC, Golden Boy, and whoever else out there, Bella, get them all involved versus Hearn, Frank, and Shalom, and get all the big ones on the table. You proper UK versus States.
A
10 v
10 would
10.
be fantastic.
Can you imagine that?
It'd be amazing. You can't rule it out because Turkey's got this way of getting promoters to work with each other because they know the coffers are there. They know the money's there to get the fighters involved and get the fights over the line, Matt.
Look, it's a good time to be involved. Look, busy couple of weeks coming up, and we expect a Eubank Ben Presser, I believe, at some point, hearing very soon. And I'm sure I'll see you there. So, Gareth, appreciate you joining us, and we'll catch up soon.
Always a pleasure. It's a lifesaver. Thank you very much.
Always a pleasure.